There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from carrying too much inside. You can be the person who shows up, the person who remembers birthdays, the person who pays the bills, the person who keeps the family running, the person who answers the emails, the person who takes care of the details no one else wants. And still, in the quiet moments when no one needs anything from you, something in you stays tense. Not because you're ungrateful, not because you're broken, not because you can't handle life. Sometimes it's simpler than that. Sometimes the mind has just been on duty for too long. You wake up, and before you even sit up, the mind begins. What needs to be done? What might go wrong? What you forgot yesterday? What you should have said? What someone might think? What you can't afford to mess up? What you're afraid will happen next. And the strange thing is, from the outside, it can look like you're doing fine. You're functioning, you're responsible. Maybe you're even successful by the world's standards. But inside, you feel like you're bracing for impact. Like your inner life is always waiting for the next wave. In Buddhism, there's a word for this. It isn't meant to label you. It isn't meant to shame you. It's just honest. Dukkha. That subtle suffering of being human. The unease of trying to hold life steady in a world that does not stay still. Tonight, I'm not here to fix you, and I'm not here to give you a checklist that promises a perfect life. Buddhism doesn't really talk like that. It speaks more like a friend who has lived long enough to know life gets heavy when we cling. So let's do something different for a little while. Let's slow down. Let's step away from the noise.
And let's explore 12 Buddhist principles, not as rules, not as commandments, but as 12 gentle invitations. Invitations to loosen the grip, to come back to yourself, to rebuild from within. And if you're listening in a season where you feel alone, I want to name something right away. Being alone isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's a doorway. Sometimes solitude is the moment life finally gives you space to breathe. Let me tell you a small truth from history, not to make a point, just to offer perspective. In the years after the Great Depression, and later after World War II, millions of people tried to move on. They didn't always have the language for trauma. They didn't call it anxiety. They didn't say nervous system. They just said, I can't sleep. My stomach is always tight. I don't feel like myself. I get angry too fast. I feel numb. People came home from war. Families rebuilt after loss. Communities tried to return to normal. And on the surface, life did continue. But inside, many carried an invisible tension. They had lived through uncertainty, day after day, and the body learned to stay guarded. Even when the danger passed, the body didn't always get the message. If that sounds familiar, it's because modern life can train the same response. Not with bombs or ration books, but with constant pressure, constant scrolling, constant comparison, constant urgency. Your mind is not weak. It's been conditioned. Buddhist practice doesn't erase your past. It doesn't pretend pain didn't happen. It simply offers a way to relate to your inner life differently. So you don't have to keep living as if you're still in an emergency when you're not. And that begins with the first principle. Principle 1. Detach from the illusion of control. Most suffering isn't created by what happens. It's created by the sentence we quietly add to what happens. It should not be like this. They should understand. This should have worked. I should be further along. Life should be fair by now. Control feels comforting, especially if you've spent years being the one who holds everything together. If you're the dependable one, control can feel like love. Because if you can control the outcome, maybe no one gets hurt. Maybe nothing falls apart. Maybe you don't have to face disappointment again. But life doesn't cooperate with control. People are imperfect. Timing is unpredictable. Bodies change. Plans break. Love shifts. Jobs end. Children grow. Parents age. Friendships fade. The world turns, whether we like it or not. Buddhist wisdom says something both simple and difficult. We suffer when we cling to how we think reality should behave. Not because we're foolish, because we're human. And there's a kind of grief hidden inside control. The grief of admitting that life is not ours to command. It can feel scary at first, like letting go means becoming powerless. But in practice, letting go of control doesn't remove power. It returns power to the only place it can actually live: your response. You can't control what someone says to you, but you can notice what it awakens in you. You can't control whether a plan works, but you can meet the outcome without abandoning yourself. You can't control how quickly life heals, but you can stop punishing yourself for being human. This is not passive. This is not giving up. This is strength. The kind that doesn't depend on the world behaving. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is whisper inwardly, "This is what's happening. I don't have to like it, but I don't have to fight reality either." When you stop fighting reality, you stop bleeding energy, and suddenly you can breathe again. A modern example: you send a text, no response. You check again and again. Your mind writes a whole story. They don't care. I said the wrong thing. I'm not important. Control wants to fix the feeling by controlling the other person, getting an answer, getting reassurance, getting certainty. But Buddhism would gently invite a different move. Notice the craving underneath. Notice the fear underneath. Notice the old story underneath. And instead of chasing certainty, come back to what is true in this moment.
I'm anxious. I'm wanting control. I'm imagining outcomes. I'm not actually in danger. I'm in discomfort. That's not a small shift. That's the beginning of freedom. And freedom begins to deepen with principle 2. Modern life has 1,000 ways to help you disappear. A screen, a podcast, a news cycle, a busy schedule, a snack, a glass of wine, another task, another errand, another conversation. Some of these are harmless, some are even helpful. But when distraction becomes a reflex, it quietly teaches the mind one thing: don't be alone with yourself. And that's where the suffering grows. Not because silence is dangerous, but because silence becomes unfamiliar. For many people, the hardest part of the day is not work. It's the moment after work, when the house gets quiet, when the kids are gone, when the spouse is asleep, when the phone finally stops lighting up, when the noise drops and you can hear your own mind again. That's when old feelings arrive. A sadness you never processed. A loneliness you didn't want to admit. A sense of meaninglessness that makes no sense on paper. A grief that comes back in waves. A regret that still has sharp edges. Buddhism doesn't call these feelings bad. It calls them visitors. They rise, they pass, they rise again. The practice isn't to get rid of them. The practice is to stop being terrified of them and to stop medicating them with constant noise. Here's a gentle truth. Maybe you're not empty. Maybe you're just unattended. Many people have lived for decades meeting everyone else's needs and never truly sitting with their own heart. Not because they didn't care, because they were surviving. So what does it mean to sit with yourself? It doesn't mean forcing yourself to meditate for an hour. It doesn't mean getting spiritual in a way that feels fake. It can be small. Sitting in your car for 1 minute before you walk into the house. Not reaching for the phone. Not narrating your life. Just feeling your breath. Or washing dishes without a video playing. Feeling the water. Hearing the small sounds. Letting your mind settle. Or walking around the block without trying to optimize the walk. Just walking. In Buddhism, these moments are not nothing. They are the soil where clarity grows. Because when you stop running, you start hearing. And what you hear at first may not be pleasant, but it may be true. And truth, even when it's tender, is healing. A modern example: you wake up at night. Your mind starts listing fears. Money, health, family, the future. The reflex is to grab the phone, to scroll, to numb. Sitting with yourself would look like not fixing, not answering, not solving, just noticing. The body is tense. The mind is spinning. Fear is here. And then, gently, one breath in, one breath out. Not as magic, as companionship. Because you can meet fear without becoming fear. That leads us to Principle 3. Principle 3. Embrace the pain that rebuilds you. Most of us were trained to believe pain is a problem. Something to fix quickly. Something to silence. Something to escape. And in the short term, escape can feel like relief. But Buddhism points out something quietly radical. Pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes pain is information. Sometimes pain is the part of you that still cares. The part of you that's still alive. Think of the pain that comes from loss. It hurts because love was real. Think of the pain that comes from disappointment. It hurts because hope existed. Think of the pain that comes from aging.
It hurts because you're facing impermanence, the truth no one can avoid, but everyone tries to postpone. Buddhist teaching doesn't romanticize suffering. It doesn't say, pain is good. It simply says, when pain is met with awareness, it can transform. Because what breaks you can also open you. There's a line people sometimes repeat. Pain is a messenger. That doesn't mean pain is always wise, but it often carries something important. A boundary you ignored, a truth you avoided, a life you outgrew, a relationship that's no longer honest, a pace that is unsustainable. In the West, many of us were taught to push through, to be tough, to not feel too much. But toughness without awareness becomes numbness, and numbness is not peace. Peace is not numb. Peace is clear. So what does it look like to embrace the pain that rebuilds you? It looks like not turning away too quickly. It looks like asking a different question. Instead of, why is this happening to me? A softer question, what is this asking me to see? Not as blame, not as punishment, as honesty. A modern example. A relationship ends, or changes, or goes cold. The mind wants to rush, find someone new, prove you're okay, stay busy, stay strong. But underneath, there might be a deeper truth. You were lonely, even inside the relationship. You abandoned parts of yourself to keep peace. You were always performing. Pain reveals what was hidden. And when you see clearly, you can rebuild honestly. Not overnight, not dramatically, but step by step. Another example. You retire. People imagine retirement as freedom, but many people feel lost because the identity was tied to being needed, to being busy, to having a role. Without that structure, a quiet ache appears. Buddhism would call this a moment of awakening. Not in the mystical sense, but in the very human sense. You're seeing what you were leaning on. And once you see it, you can begin to stand differently. Pain can be a doorway, not because it feels good, but because it's honest. And honesty is the beginning of real transformation. Transition. The quiet turning point. So far, we've touched 3 movements: letting go of control, sitting with yourself, and meeting pain as a teacher, not a curse. This is the beginning of rebuilding. Not the kind of rebuilding that looks impressive on social media. The kind that happens in private. The kind that happens when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when it's just you and the life you're learning to live from the inside out. In the next section, we'll move into something practical and deeply relieving, simplifying the outer life, becoming the observer, and letting go of an old identity that no longer fits. Not to become a different person, but to return to what was always there, a steadier, quieter self. Nếu chỉ ok câu này, chị chỉ cần nhấn tiếp phần 2, em sẽ viết ngay phần 2, Principle 4 đến 6. Tiếp tục đúng mạch kể chuyện, thêm ví dụ đời sống Mỹ và lớp suy ngẫm mới để đảm bảo hơn 40% nội dung là mới, nhưng vẫn giữ cốt lõi 12 nguyên tắc. Before we continue, let's pause for a moment. So far, we've been exploring a quiet kind of rebuilding. Not the kind that looks dramatic, not the kind that gets applause, the kind that happens when you finally admit, I've been holding on too tightly. I've been running from myself. I've been treating pain like an enemy when it might be a teacher. If you're listening and thinking, yeah, that's me, just know, nothing is wrong with you. This is what it means to be human in a loud world. Now we move into 3 principles that feel very practical, especially in the second half of life. Simplifying the outer world, learning to watch the inner world, and letting go of an identity that no longer fits. And if you've been carrying stress for years, these can feel like opening a window in a stuffy room. There's a common belief in modern America. If you add more, you'll feel better. More organization, more productivity, more upgrades, more plans, more staying on top of things. And sometimes, yes, adding can help. But there comes a point where adding becomes a way of avoiding. Avoiding stillness, avoiding grief, avoiding questions like, is this life actually mine? Do I even like the way my days feel? Why do I feel heavy when everything looks fine? In Buddhism, there's a gentle idea that runs through many teachings. Clinging creates suffering. Not only clinging to people, clinging to outcomes, clinging to comfort, clinging to the image of who you're supposed to be. And sometimes, clinging looks like clutter. Not just physical clutter, though that's part of it. It looks like a calendar that never breathes, a mind that never rests, a home filled with things you don't use but can't release, relationships that drain you but you keep because history, a phone filled with noise that you call connection. Simplifying is not minimalism as a trend. It's not about making your life look clean. It's about making your life feel clear. It's about asking one simple question. What is truly essential to my peace? And then, slowly, without drama, begin subtracting what isn't. A modern example, the storage unit life. You know what's fascinating? In the United States, entire businesses exist for one purpose: to store things we don't have room for. We pay monthly to keep objects we rarely touch. And many people do something similar emotionally. They keep old arguments, old guilt, old resentment, old versions of themselves, stored away, not used, not loved, not released, just kept. Simplifying is walking to that emotional storage unit and saying, I don't need to carry this anymore. It might start with something small, letting go of clothes you keep out of obligation, clearing a counter, unfollowing accounts that leave you anxious, saying no to one thing on the calendar, turning off one stream of news that keeps your nervous system on fire. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about giving your spirit a little more oxygen. Because here's the truth many people discover later in life. The peace you're looking for often isn't something you have to chase. It's something you uncover when you stop piling things on top of it. This one can change everything, but it's subtle. Buddhism teaches that you are not your thoughts and you are not your emotions. You are the one who notices them. That may sound simple, but think about how most of us live. Something happens, small, ordinary. A comment from your spouse, a tone from your coworker, a message left on read, a mistake you didn't expect, a bill you forgot, a doctor's appointment you're nervous about. And instantly, the mind reacts. Anger rises, fear tightens the chest, sadness drops like a weight. And we don't just feel the emotion, we become it.
We speak from it. We text from it. We make decisions from it. We replay it for hours. Then later we think, I don't know why I did that. I wasn't myself. Buddhism would gently say, you were yourself, but you were caught in a storm. Becoming the observer means learning to notice the storm without jumping into it. It's the difference between I am angry and anger is here. That single shift creates space, and in that space, there's freedom.
Not the freedom of never feeling, the freedom of not being owned by what you feel. The tiny pause that saves relationships. Let's make this very real. Many marriages don't break because of one big thing. They erode through 1,000 small reactions. The sigh, the eye roll, the sharp tone, the quick assumption. The moment we react, we often defend something inside us. The fear of not being respected, the fear of not being loved, the fear of being ignored. The observer pauses and says inwardly, something is getting triggered. Not to blame the other person, just to notice truth. And then, one breath. Not to become calm for their sake, but to become present for your own. Because when you can pause, you gain choices. You can ask instead of accuse. You can be honest without being cruel. You can set a boundary without burning the bridge.
This is emotional maturity, the Buddhist way. Not perfection, just awareness.
And awareness doesn't need hours of meditation. Sometimes it's 10 seconds in the bathroom, hand on the sink, breathing, remembering, I don't have to react right now. That's strength. This one is tender. Many people think change is for the young. They think, this is just who I am. I'm anxious, I'm angry. I'm the one who ruins things. I'm the one who always carries the weight. I'm the responsible one. I'm the strong one. But Buddhism holds a radical idea. There is no fixed self. Not in a cold, philosophical way, in a deeply human way. The self is patterns, habits, stories we repeat, roles we learn to play. And what has been learned can be unlearned. In the second half of life, many people quietly grieve an old identity. Sometimes it's the identity of being needed. You spent decades taking care of people. Then the kids grow up. A parent passes. A job ends. A marriage shifts. And suddenly, you're left with a question. If I'm not needed like that, who am I? Or it's the identity of being successful. You did what the culture told you to do. Work hard, provide, stay responsible. And then you reach a moment where you realize, I built a life, but did I build inner peace? This is not a failure. This is awakening. Letting go of the old self doesn't mean hating who you were. It means understanding. That version of you was trying to survive, trying to belong, trying to stay safe, trying to be loved. So Buddhism doesn't say, destroy the ego in a harsh way. It says, more softly, thank the old self and let it rest.
A modern example,
The always strong person. If you've been the strong one for a long time, you may not even know how to receive care. You might feel uncomfortable when someone helps you. You might feel guilty resting. You might feel weak asking for support. But that always strong identity can become a prison. Letting go might sound like, I don't have to earn love by suffering. I don't have to carry everything to be worthy. I can be human and still be respected. I can soften without falling apart. And no, this doesn't happen all at once. It happens moment by moment, one small choice at a time. Speaking to yourself with less cruelty, admitting when you're tired, choosing one honest boundary, allowing a pause instead of pushing through. The old self doesn't need to be punished. It needs to be released. Because growth isn't becoming someone else.
It's becoming less afraid to be who you already are beneath the roles. So now we've touched, simplifying the outer life, observing instead of reacting, and loosening the grip on an identity that no longer fits. In the next part, we move into something many people resist, but secretly need: solitude. Not loneliness, not isolation, but the kind of aloneness that helps you come home. We'll talk about walking alone with strength, choosing mindfulness over multitasking, and learning acceptance without giving up. That's principles 7 through 9. If you're still here with me, let's take one slow breath together. Because what we're talking about isn't theory. It's the kind of inner work that shows up when life gets quiet on you. When the kids don't need you the same way. When the phone doesn't ring like it used to. When a friendship changes. When you lose someone.
When you retire. When your body starts sending new messages. When the identity you lived inside for decades starts to loosen. Many people hear that quiet and think, something is wrong. But Buddhism offers a different possibility. Maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe you're finally hearing yourself. And that brings us to principle 7. There are seasons when your path becomes lonely. Not because you did something bad, not because you failed, but because life naturally shifts. People change, priorities change, energy changes. And one day, you realize the crowd that once surrounded you isn't there in the same way. Some people panic when this happens. They rush to fill the silence. They stay in relationships that don't feel honest. They stay busy so they don't have to feel. They scroll so they don't have to listen. But Buddhism has a surprisingly respectful view of solitude. It doesn't glorify it in a romantic way. It doesn't say you should cut everyone off. It simply says solitude can be sacred. Because it strips away performance. When no one is watching, you begin to notice, what do I really think? What do I actually want? What hurts that I never admitted? What parts of me have I ignored? There's a reason so many spiritual traditions point towards silence. Not because people are better alone, because the truth is easier to hear without noise. A true history reflection. The Dust Bowl kind of loneliness. During the Dust Bowl years in the 1930s, many families in the American plains faced something brutal. Their land stopped giving back. Drought, dust storms, crops failing. Some people had to leave everything they knew and move west, not as a dream, but as survival. Imagine that kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being disliked. The loneliness of watching your old life disappear. Many of those families carried quiet grief for years. And yet people also discovered something in that era. When the old supports collapse, you find what's real inside you. Endurance, humility, a different relationship with control, a different relationship with what you truly need. That's not positive spin. It's just human truth. Some of your loneliest seasons may be the ones that reveal your deepest strength. Modern example. When you stop being social and start being real. In midlife and later life, some people realize they've had lots of interaction, but very little intimacy. They've been around people, but still felt unseen. Walking alone, emotionally, spiritually, can mean this. You stop begging to be understood by people who aren't listening. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking to fit a room. And slowly, you begin to become your own companion. Not in a lonely way, in a steady way. Walking alone doesn't mean you never need others. It means you no longer abandon yourself to keep others. It means the relationship you have with yourself becomes reliable. And from that reliability, you can love others without needing them to complete you. That leads naturally to principle 8. Multitasking is praised like a superpower, especially in America. We admire the person who can juggle everything: emails while eating, phone calls while driving, news in the background while folding laundry, thinking about tomorrow while living today. But there's a quiet cost. When attention is divided, life feels thin, and over time, scattered attention creates scattered nervous systems. You may have noticed this. Even when you're resting, you're not resting. Your body is on the couch, but your mind is sprinting.
Buddhism offers a practice that is almost embarrassingly simple. Be where you are. When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you listen, just listen. Not as a productivity hack, as a way of returning to life. Because life is not happening later, it's happening now. A modern example, the dinner table that's not really a dinner table. Many families sit down together physically, but everyone's somewhere else. Someone is scrolling, someone is half watching sports, someone is thinking about work, someone is worrying about money, someone is replaying an argument. So you're together, but not together. Mindfulness can begin with one small change. One meal where the phone is not invited. Not forever, not as punishment, just as an experiment. You take a bite and actually taste it. You look at the person across from you. You hear the room, and maybe you notice something surprising. Your nervous system starts to unclench. Because presence has a calming effect. Not because everything is perfect, because you stopped being in 3 places at once. Another modern example, driving without war inside you. A lot of people carry stress into driving. The traffic, the impatience, the sense of being late. Mindfulness can be as small as noticing, my shoulders are up, my jaw is tight. I'm treating the road like a battlefield. Then softening just a little. Not to become a saint, just to stop suffering unnecessarily.
In Buddhism, mindfulness is often taught through breath, body, and attention. But at its core, it's simple. You stop fighting the present moment. And that prepares you for Principle 9, which is one of the deepest. Principle 9. Accept what is and change what you can. There is a kind of suffering that comes from one habit, arguing with reality. Not out loud, inside. We replay what happened. We rewrite conversations. We imagine different outcomes. We torture ourselves with if only. If only I had said something different. If only I had left sooner. If only they had understood me. If only my body didn't change. If only life wasn't like this. Buddhism doesn't ask you to pretend you like reality. It asks you to see reality clearly. Because you cannot heal in a war with what is. Acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is the moment you stop bleeding energy.
It's the moment you stop tightening your fist around something that already happened. And from that honesty, wise action becomes possible. A simple way to hold this is, what is here that I cannot change? What is here that I can change? Can I tell the difference without punishing myself? That last part matters, because many people use acceptance as a weapon against themselves. They accept the present by saying, well, I guess I'm stuck. That's not acceptance. That's hopelessness wearing spiritual clothing. Buddhist acceptance is warmer than that. It says, this is what's here, and I can still respond wisely. A true history reflection. Living with what you can't change. In the early 1970s, many American families were dealing with enormous social and economic uncertainty: oil shocks, inflation, layoffs, shifting social norms. Again, no politics here, just human impact. When the ground feels unstable, the mind tends to reach for certainty, but often, certainty isn't available. And people had to learn, we can't control the whole economy. We can't control global events. We can't control every outcome, but we can control our response. We can simplify. We can support one another. We can pause before panic. We can make the next wise choice. This is what Buddhist practice trains, not control, clarity. Modern example, the thing you can't fix. Maybe it's a health diagnosis. Maybe it's a loved one's addiction. Maybe it's an adult child making choices you wouldn't choose. Maybe it's grief that still returns even years later. Acceptance means you stop demanding that reality be different. Not because you agree with it, but because you see the truth. Fighting what is doesn't change it. It only adds suffering. And then when there is something you can do,
You do it from steadiness, not panic. A boundary, a conversation, a doctor's appointment, a walk, a support group, a new daily rhythm. The action isn't frantic. It comes from a still place. That is one of the quiet powers Buddhism offers. So now we've moved through the strength of walking alone, the healing of mindfulness, and the balance of acceptance and action. In the next part, we enter a very tender area. How you treat yourself, how you speak to yourself, how thoughts build the world you live inside. We'll move into Principle 10, compassion, especially for yourself. Principle 11, breaking the thought cycle. Principle 12, returning to the breath. And then we'll close, not with a promise of perfect happiness, but with something more honest, a way to carry life with less weight.
If you've made it this far, you may notice something. This isn't just about Buddhist ideas. It's about how you live inside your own mind. Because life doesn't only happen out there, in the bank account, the calendar, the family dynamics, the headlines. Life also happens in the tone of your inner voice, in what you do when the chest tightens, in what you believe when fear shows up. The next 3 principles go straight into that inner territory. Compassion, especially for yourself. Breaking the thought cycle and returning again and again to the breath. And the reason these matter so much is simple. You can simplify your schedule. You can walk alone. You can practice mindfulness. But if the voice inside you is still harsh, life will still feel heavy. So let's go there, gently. For many people, compassion is easy, as long as it's for someone else.
You see someone struggling, and something in you softens. You understand. You give them space. You offer patience. But when it comes to your own pain, a different voice appears. A voice that says, "Get it together. You're too sensitive. You should be over this by now. You always mess things up. Why can't you be normal? Why are you still like this?" That voice can sound so familiar that you assume it's truth. In Buddhism, compassion isn't treated like a personality trait. It's treated like a practice, a way of relating to suffering, your own and others. And there's a reason Buddhism begins compassion at home, because the way you treat yourself shapes the environment your spirit lives in. If the inner environment is harsh, something in you stays guarded. You might function, you might perform, but you won't feel safe inside your own life.
Self-compassion does not mean making excuses. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means recognizing something very human. You are allowed to struggle. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be in the middle of healing. You are allowed to not have it all figured out. A modern example, the silent self-insults. Many people carry a kind of private cruelty. They don't say it out loud, but they think it. After a mistake, I'm an idiot. After an awkward moment, I always ruin things. After a hard day, I can't handle anything. Imagine speaking to a friend that way. You wouldn't, and yet the mind does it automatically, like a habit. Self-compassion is noticing that habit without shame, and then changing the tone gradually. Not with fake positivity, with honesty and kindness in the same breath.
Something like, "That was hard. I didn't handle it perfectly. I'm human. I can learn. I can try again." In Buddhism, compassion is not weakness. It's strength without violence. Because harshness might motivate you for a moment, but it doesn't heal you. It just keeps you at war with yourself. A small practice that fits real life. Sometimes self-compassion is as simple as a gesture, a hand on the chest, a slower breath, a quiet acknowledgement. This is painful. I'm here. That's it. No big speech, just a moment where you stop abandoning yourself. Because the truth is, in the hardest seasons, what most people need isn't a solution. They need companionship. And the first companionship is your own. That brings us to Principle 11. Because compassion changes how you relate to thoughts. Principle 11.
break the cycle by breaking the thought. Thoughts are powerful, not because every thought is true, but because repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs shape choices, and choices shape a life. If you've lived long enough, you've probably noticed this. The mind has grooves. Certain thoughts appear in the same situations almost automatically. When something goes wrong, the mind says, "Of course, this always happens to me." When someone is distant, the mind says, "They don't care, I'm not important." When you feel behind, the mind says, "It's too late." When you feel afraid, the mind says, "Something bad is coming." Buddhism doesn't treat this as personal failure. It treats it like conditioning. The mind repeats what it has learned to repeat, and the practice begins with one skill: awareness, noticing the thought as a thought. Instead of being pulled into it like a river, you stand on the shore and watch it pass. You might silently name it: worrying, catastrophizing, self-blame, old story. That naming is not childish. It's powerful. Because when you name the thought, you separate from it, and separation creates freedom. A modern example: the 3 a.m. mind. There's a particular kind of suffering that happens at night. 3 a.m. comes, and suddenly the mind is a courtroom. Every mistake is evidence. Every regret is replayed. The future feels terrifying. The past feels heavy. But here's a Buddhist insight that can be a lifesaver. A thought at 3 a.m. is not necessarily a truth. It's often a nervous system in distress. Breaking the cycle might look like noticing the thought, not negotiating with it, not proving it wrong with 1,000 arguments, just returning to the body. Because the mind gets most convincing when the body is most tired. A gentle way to challenge a thought without fighting it. Buddhism invites questions that create clarity. Not aggressive questions, simple ones. Is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Is it leading me toward peace or away from it? Often you realize this is an old loop, a familiar story, not a fact. And then comes the next step, not replacing it with a fantasy, but with a more grounded thought. Instead of, "I always fail," something like, "I've made mistakes and I've also learned." Instead of, "It's too late," something like, "I'm here now, that counts." Instead of, "I can't handle this," something like, "This is hard, and I can take one step." This isn't pretending, it's training the mind toward reality. The full reality, not the fearful slice. Buddhism understood something modern science is now confirming. The mind can be trained.
The grooves can change. And the tool that supports this more than almost anything else is Principle 12. Principle 12. Return to the breath. It is your anchor. When life gets overwhelming, people often rush outward. They try to fix everything immediately. They try to talk it out quickly. They try to distract themselves. But Buddhism offers something quieter. In the middle of chaos, one thing is always available: your breath. It's almost too simple, but that's what makes it powerful. The breath is always in the present. It does not live in yesterday. It does not panic about tomorrow. It only happens now. So when you return to the breath, you return to the only place life can actually be lived. What returning to the breath looks like in real moments. It might be in a parking lot, before you walk into a difficult conversation. It might be in the kitchen, when irritation rises. It might be in a doctor's office waiting room. It might be in bed, when the mind won't stop. Returning to the breath doesn't mean you become calm instantly. It means you stop feeding the fire. You give yourself a moment of space. One inhale, one exhale, and you notice, I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I don't have to solve my whole life in this minute.
This is not escape. This is grounding. A simple breath practice. If you'd like to try something right now, you can. Not as a test, just as a gentle experiment. Let your shoulders drop a little. Unclench the jaw, even slightly. Inhale slowly through the nose, and exhale a little longer than the inhale. Inhale and exhale. Now notice the feeling of air moving. That's it. No achievement, just presence.
Buddhism doesn't claim the breath will erase your problems. It offers something more realistic. The breath gives you a way to meet problems without losing yourself. And over time, that changes everything. Because when you can stay present, you can respond instead of react. You can speak with care. You can set boundaries. You can grieve without drowning. You can feel fear without becoming fear. The breath becomes a quiet home you can return to, even when everything else feels unstable. If you take nothing else from this episode, take this. Rebuilding yourself does not require a dramatic transformation. It often begins with a small turning inward, a pause instead of a reaction, one honest moment of silence, one compassionate sentence toward yourself, one thought you don't obey, one breath you actually feel. Buddhism doesn't promise a life without pain.
It doesn't say you'll never feel lonely, never feel anxious, never feel grief. It offers a different kind of hope. Not the hope that life will become easy, but the hope that you can become more spacious. So life can move through you without hardening you. You are not broken. You are becoming. And you don't have to rebuild in front of anyone. The most powerful version of you is not forged in the crowd. It's forged in the quiet moments when no one is watching, and you choose to return to yourself. Maybe tonight, that return is just one breath. And if that's all it is, that's enough.